Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Doing It Decent Shop. 300 series Peterbilt problems. So this will cover your 357, 378, 379, 377s. Those issues. These trucks lasted way longer than anybody originally intended. And with all the concerns over emission laws and the ability of a truck to earn money or not, they're more popular than ever. More popular than they were when they were new. Bringing new prices now all of a sudden. So I wanted to go over, and this is a prime example to do it, some common issues, problems that you need to be aware of when looking at one of these trucks. And this truck is a good example of it. It's lasted, the ECM, which I believe to be original, has 3 million miles on it. So from its manufacture date, you figure a delivery date, late 98, about 130,000 miles per year. So pretty average use. So just average mileage, 3 million. So we're going to start with the bare bones, the nuts and bolts of it. And I'm going to walk through this side, the frame. It becomes more and more an issue, whatever they changed. The newer ones, seems sometimes in the 2000s, early mid-2000s, they got worse with the frame paint that'll actually blister and take in salt in this part of the country, or whatever other road contaminants. There's kind of a good example you can see of it happening. And the frames will get thin, especially through this area. Number one places I've seen them crack, right here, back behind the spring hanger. I've seen them split through there, and if you can catch it soon enough, usually it's somewhat salvageable, or at least it's not on a tow truck. It'll start in this bottom flange. When it makes the corner, it's going to take off and come through. The truck's going to fold in half. And the other, underneath the cab, back in this area, seen them split there. You're at the longest distance between the axles, so that's what I chalked that up to. Moving into the back, this truck has an air leaf on it, probably the least costly suspension. They each have their issues. I don't care for them. I think they ride rough. Issues with the air leaf. This little U-bolt oftentimes will get loose, and they beat and flop around here. Oftentimes is not detrimental. If it gets bad enough, you can break bolts in here, or this one here. What we refer to in the industry as a beaver tail. Will occasionally, these will get loose and beat the saddles out. And this one, as you can see right here, has a crack in it, which is not, doesn't appear to be new damage. Right here, the transverse cross arm. As you can see, this one's been braced in by, I believe that was 2 owners ago. And I do know most of the history of this vehicle, but these will sometimes break off. This was especially an issue in the late 90s for whatever reason, and especially, I don't know, maybe some spicers busting that housing off of what we commonly refer to as the banjo. Moving back again into the later years, again with issues with frame paint. This one has a bolt-on power divider rear cover, so they didn't do it, but if they have a stamped cover, the front drive will do it, the rear drive will do it. These will rot out. And I've even seen a few of them split along this factory weld line. So that's something to be aware of. Opposite end of the truck now, starting with the chassis. This plate, this cross member that the radiator sits in, tends to rust out, and they've gotten hard to get. Not only that, they're an extreme pain to replace. We just did one a couple months ago. This one, you can see right here, if you pulled that mount out, you could probably take a hammer and put that through there. Moving back, and it's extremely difficult to see. I can't even get a good film of it for you here. This pivot for the clutch arm where it attaches to the bottom of the cab, if the operator used the clutch often, that'll be extremely worn. I've seen them break the attaching hardware as well and start to hang and droop off of there. Had them to the point where you can replace everything in the clutch brake nose plate, fork, and everything, and still not get a good clutch brake squeeze. And you got to run an oversized brake even though everything is new to make up to compensate this wear. This one, I grab hold of it. It's not terrible, so it's a safe bet that whoever ran this for most of its life or all of its life didn't use the clutch a whole lot. Moving back, fuel lines. Peterbilts are notorious for fuel supply and return issues. Running one tank over, sucking one dry. That can be a real nightmare issue. A lot of times plug vents, if everything else has been replaced. As you need to have your return lines as close to even length as possible. All the flow the same. And as you can see, Peterbilt in their infinite wisdom with this era of truck, they didn't put the lines, the T's in the middle. So it's basically very difficult without a bunch of extra line hanging over to get the same length. So when I'm looking at a truck, that's something that I do, is pop both tanks just to see if that's going to be a problem moving forward. Back here at the back, these cross members are good for loose bolts. Kind of a common issue. This one here, you can see it's not damaged. It's not new damage from the rollover, but had a split in this cross member. And pretty tough to see, but it's something, it's there. Bunk mounts. Moving on to the body. We'll get junk in them. They'll separate. You can see this one's starting, before the wreck even, was starting to jack and separate. Body corrosion in the corners. We live in the Rust Belt, and it does eat aluminum. Unibilt mounts, or even any exhaust mounts, but especially the Unibilt mounts that wrap around here. You can see these, somebody has put some sort of panel glue or something in there, or at least on top of it. But if you took that off, that would likely be through behind that panel and need to be reskinned if you were going to redo the body on this truck. The top ones will do it as well. Cab leaks, windshield leaks. They all leak, or it seems most of them do. Again, this has been an issue with this truck. Whoever put the windshield in last, seam sealed, glued it quite heavily. And the cab lights and the horns have been touched up. I don't know why. It seems that this is a problem, again, with the later, moving into the 2000s. And I don't know if it has something to do with when they went to the Kenworth style square lights. But I see the most cab leaks from even, well, obviously this truck in the late 90s, but moving forward into the 2000s. And a lot of times the only ways to get it is to pull all that off, start all over, pull the headliner down, see where it's coming from. The water leak itself, maybe not such a big deal, but the progressive damage that it causes. Moving inside, doors get leaky and rattly. Pins. Now this stuff has been opened and closed a lot, and this is the curbside, because in this particular unit we can't get the drive side open. Major issue where Peterbilt Packard chose to put the fuse panel. The electrical junks are down here where you're kicking your wet feet. Corrosion in that box. It's almost a guaranteed on a vehicle of this age, but how bad is it? If you have to go in there and replace that, it's quite an extensive, time-consuming and costly process. Usually you can clean them up, but you can spend oodles and oodles of hours just cleaning that stuff up and hoping for the best. Cab mounts. This was more a problem with the older trucks, splitting this aluminum rail and crushing down. Motor mounts, which isn't so much a Packard problem, but any truck. And as you can see, this, they're missing, and the rubber bushing is gone. So she needed some motor mounts. Front leaf springs. These springs last and last and last and last. You can see these have been done. This is a nice arch here. I can stick my hand in it. Worn truck with 1 million+ miles on it that they're original. I've seen these down around 2 inches. If your bumper is unexplicably low, a lot of times, that's the reason. It needs a set of pair of front springs. Inboard mount fifth wheels, the rod under here. This seems to have gotten better with the later trucks. I don't know why. If they increased the gap. Kind of looks like they did. It was more of an issue with the 50 series. But that's something to look for, jacking and thin spots in the frame underneath. Battery cables. I've seen multiple 300 series trucks burnt up through the battery cables shaking and bouncing and sawing through the hangers here or back on the box. Seen a lot of insurance claims from that. Okay, so hopefully you found that interesting and informative. 300 series trucks, 379s, common issues. All trucks have their problems. All trucks have problems, but in 3 million miles and still going, they were really quite masters of engineering for their time. Wait, what is his phrase on the back of the bunk? Oh, real original.